Pled not guilty in a New York City courtroom days after a U.S. military operation in Venezuela meant he is not the president anymore. He is captured along with his wife, Cilia Flores. Here's a look at some of the charges. The former president and his wife pleading not guilty to drug trafficking and other federal charges. If convicted, the two could spend decades in prison. Former Deputy Assistant Attorney General Tom Dupree joins us live. So, Tom, a dictator plucked from another country, captured and then brought to the U.S. to face charges. A lot of questions are swirling over whether Maduro can even get a fair trial in the United States. Tony DeCopel raised this issue earlier. I thought it was a good question. There's been so much said about him for so many decades.
Yes, and look, my take is that Maduro is going to get a fair trial in the United States. Our legal system, although this is certainly an unusual case, has experience in handling these types of things. There was obviously the prosecution of Noriega from Panama many years ago. And of course, every year we have high-profile trials of people in the United States, people as to whom jurors may already come to the job with preconceived notions about the person. We've tried presidential candidates, former presidential candidates, all of that. I think the United States legal system is well equipped and that Nicolas Maduro will be given due process and a fair trial in the United States.
So how will the legality of this case play out? And how will this happen if it's determined unlawful with what happened?
My guess is that the legality of Maduro's capture will actually not play a significant role in his prosecution. You'll recall that the same types of arguments were raised in the other example I mentioned of Manuel Noriega of Panama, where part of his legal defense, at least as he tried to present it, was that his capture was unlawful. But the United States courts basically said that's irrelevant. We are just going to focus on the charges that you're confronting and the evidence concerning those charges. We don't care about whether or not your capture was lawful or unlawful. So while I would expect Maduro's defense lawyers to try to make hay out of his capture, my best guess is that the United States judges are going to say, this isn't the place for those sorts of arguments.
So, and it sounds like basically they're just saying we only focusing on your charges. We don't care how you got here. We don't care anything about that. What are your charges? And we're going to look at it. We don't care how you got here. Let's keep going.
Let's talk about precedent. You talk about Manuel Noriega. Can that actually be cited in court to bolster the case of prosecution?
It can. Certainly, lawyers and judges will often look to analogous cases as precedent that will guide, if not determine, the outcome in their particular case. And there are many similarities between the prosecution of Noriega and the way the Maduro prosecution is shaping up. And so I suspect that the Noriega trial will be like a shadow that hovers over this entire proceeding from beginning to end, with prosecutors, with defense lawyers, with judges, continually drawing contrasts and comparisons between what happened in the Noriega case and what's happening in the Maduro case.
Lots of talk between now and that March 17th hearing. Tom Dupree, good to talk to you. Okay, so let's talk to CBS News senior coordinating producer for the Crime of Public Safety Unit, Anna Schechter. Anna, thank you so much for joining us again. Talk to us from what you're seeing from the evidentiary side of what was presented in court today and what you're learning.
Sure. Well, we saw the 25-page indictment made sweeping allegations of a narco-terrorism conspiracy. But when you read the letter of the indictment, there are just a few concrete examples. There's one that was really interesting where Maduro used his private plane, which has diplomatic cover, to fly back, allegedly, cash that was earned from the illegal selling of cocaine in the United States, and that it was flown back on his plane back to Venezuela. There's another mention of a 2007 meeting where his wife received hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash in order to bribe officials and facilitate this massive scheme. So while the indictment was light on specifics, there were a few of them, and we didn't hear about any of that in court today. What the judge did is he read the charges to Maduro and his wife Cilia Flores and asked them if they understand the charges. They said they do. They waived the right to read having the whole indictment read to them. But an interesting moment, Reed. At one point, Maduro said, "I'm an innocent man and I'm a decent man." That's very unusual. The judge immediately clapped back and said, that's not what we're here to do today. There'll be a lot of time for that, Reed.
Anna Schechter, there certainly will be, and we know you'll be covering it every step of the way. Thank you so much. Good to talk to you.
Now, Absolutely crazy situation. A lot of things that we have to take into account. But let's get over into this next video about how the Venezuelan people are reacting.
CBS News correspondent Lilia Luciano joins us now from Cucuta, Colombia. This is right next to the Venezuelan border with a reaction there to what's happening. Lilia, good morning to you. How is that part of the world responding to this seismic development?
Well, we are, Errol, just to give you a scene setter here, we are on the border between Colombia and Venezuela. As you remember, we were the only team of U.S. correspondents. Well, I was the only correspondent, and Walker here with me was the only producer from a U.S. network inside Venezuela during last year's election. This time around, we have not been allowed to go in. So as you can see, there are many cameras here, many crews trying to get into Venezuela to hear what things are like from inside the country. That said, we have been hearing from people coming in and out. And the reason why you're seeing these armored vehicles here is because whenever things collapse in Venezuela, when there is mass chaos, when there's the possibility of violence or mass migration, Colombia has to prepare. Last night, I was talking to the Minister of Defense, and he explained to me that one of the biggest concerns is that if, in fact, Venezuela starts tackling their organized crime over there, which hasn't happened at a great scale before, that violence and those people might spill over across the border and affect Colombia. Here's a little bit of what's happening inside Venezuela at this moment. In Caracas, Venezuela's capital, residents rushed to the supermarket and lined up at pharmacies and gas stations, stocking up. There's anxiety and desperation, this woman says, and we don't know what will happen. Venezuela's future hinges on who will run the country and how, following nearly 3 decades of authoritarian rule by Nicolas Maduro and before him by the late Hugo Chavez. In Venezuela, supporters of Maduro's regime made it known. Our president is Nicolas Maduro, this protester says. The country's interim president is Delcy Rodriguez, a longtime leading figure of the regime. She was oil minister and has been Maduro's vice president since 2018. Nailin Peña is among millions of Venezuelans who fled the regime. She's in Colombia hoping to return, but is skeptical of Rodriguez. Nothing's going to change, you think? Nada va a cambiar, Chris. No. We were in Caracas during the last presidential election when the city erupted in protest against the regime, despite the opposition showing evidence that they won with nearly 70% of the vote. Maduro continued his reign. Peña is among the many Venezuelans abroad wondering why President Trump is negotiating with regime figures instead of supporting the opposition leader, María Corina Machado. Respecto a la figura de María Corina Machado.
Todo el mundo vio lo que vio y todo el mundo vio lo que vio y resultados no fallan.
Everybody saw what happened, and the results are not wrong, meaning that it was the opposition who won the election. Over the weekend, President Trump said that María Corina Machado and the opposition don't have the support or the respect to run Venezuela. That caused a lot of frustration among the supporters of the opposition, but I've heard from Venezuelans who say, look, we're giving the Trump administration the benefit of the doubt in negotiating with the regime figures in power for the sake of stability. We're going to continue reporting here. As you can see, it started raining, but people are continuing to cross back and forth. It's a very dynamic border. Errol.
All right, Lilia, with that live reporting out of Colombia for us with all the latest. Lilia, we appreciate it for you.
Yeah, it's a crazy situation going on, crazy situation, a lot of things to think about. But what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that whole situation? It's a crazy world, y'all, but we got to review it together. We have to review the world together. But like I said, let me know your thoughts and let me know if you disagree with anything I said.